Reality TV dominates television today. In fact, it's estimated that almost 80% of adult TV viewers watch reality TV shows. But how did we get here? I spoke with the author of a new book which traces the rise of reality television and its broader impact on society as part of our arts and culture series, Canvas.
This is a bowling ball, and this is a cake.
From elaborate cake decoration to the antics of a luxury yacht crew in the Mediterranean.
Let me know when my stern is clear.
So-called reality television now captures and contrives a seemingly endless array of subjects. While it's often derided by critics and even fans as trivial, its cultural influence is undeniable.
And would you stop taking pictures of yourself? Your sister's going to jail.
It's launched multi-billion-dollar dynasties, remade cable TV networks.
You're fired.
And arguably reshaped American politics. A new book by New Yorker staff writer and Pulitzer Prize winner Emily Nussbaum, Cue the Sun, The Invention of Reality TV, traces the history of this now ubiquitous genre. I recently sat down with Nussbaum and asked her why she started thinking about writing this book 20 years ago.
It was because I was obsessed with watching the first season of Big Brother in the United States on video streaming, which was very new at that time. I had also been very into the real world, and I was fascinated by what seemed like an entirely new genre that was bubbling up, like a new industry. So I wanted to write a nonfiction book about this kind of growth of a new Hollywood. So when I got to it years later, I started looking into the history of the genre, and I assumed, frankly, the way that I had at the time, that it was a modern phenomenon. And only once I started doing research did I realize that there was a real back history to reality television, and that's where this book came from. It's an origin story.
You trace these very deep roots that I did not know about in American media. We go all the way back to the radio shows of the 1920s and 30s, game shows and prank shows with everyday people. When the format really moved from radio to TV, though, how did that change the dynamics? What did that do?
In the late 40s, there had been this boom of shows that were called the audience participation shows. And they created the same kind of moral backlash that reality TV did at the turn of the century. Like, there was outrage about the tackiness and narcissism of this. So there was a show that people are probably familiar with that's Candid Camera. That started as a radio show. And on the radio, when you prank somebody, they have relative anonymity. If you prank somebody on television, you can see them look humiliated, surprised, angry, sad, overwhelmed, giggle. It's like a much more intense experience. So I would say the biggest change was that it was a change for what these kinds of shows meant to the audience and their own feeling of being riveted by the emotions, but also sometimes guilty and a little as though they were colluding with the prank that was happening.
So I was fascinated to learn from your book that it was PBS that created America's first reality TV family, part of a documentary series by our member station in New York, WNET, basically documented the lives of the Loud family in Santa Barbara, California for 7 months for a series called An American Family back in 1973. This is a moment between the mom, Pat, and one of her sons, Lance, walking around New York where he lives.
Everybody I could imagine, I stood apart from.
Yeah?
Like, you know, when I was 13, I dyed my hair silver and did all that. Just think it was energy that was being wasted because, I don't know, it was like being a little mouse and trapped in a box.
Why were moments like that so revolutionary for the format?
That episode, which is about Pat's relationship with Lance, who's gay. It's about their intimate relationship and about her love for him and her fears for him. And the reason this was so startling to people was partially because of Lance. Like, there had never been a visibly, openly gay man on television. And this was like a scandal for people. It was made as a documentary, but when it came out, it was received as reality television, which is to say, people were scandalized by seeing the inside of this family. And during the course of it, Pat, who's in that clip, asked her husband for a divorce. So her divorce and Lance's homosexuality became the subject of a 3 million think pieces. It turned, as you were saying, the Louds themselves into really the first reality stars.
You write in great detail specifically about the CBS show Survivor, in which contestants basically battle to be the last person standing in some remote situation. And this moment in the very first season finale ended up being watched by more than 57 million people. Take a quick look.
The winner of the first Survivor competition is Rich. Congratulations, Rich.
You say the Survivor supercharged reality TV. How?
I think it happened for a lot of different reasons, but one of them was electrical moments like that finale. When I wrote this book, I interviewed more than 300 people. One of my favorite interviews was with Ramona, who was a member of that cast, and she left the show relatively early, but she stuck around on the island, so she was with the camera people when she was watching it. And she had this description where she was just describing everybody's inner thoughts as essentially like, who would think this could ever happen, that the villainous guy on the show ends up winning? It established a format that had never been done before, that wove together soap operas, game shows, prank shows, in a kind of lasting and unbeatable format. There was just a vast array of reality shows resulted in the aftermath, but also the creation of the industry.
I think it's fair to say there's an understanding among audiences that what they're watching isn't just reality, that there's a lot of producing and manipulation. But what about the folks who take part in this? Like, what is the trade-off for them for agreeing to have their lives filmed in this way?
You know, it's complex because for both the cast and the crew members, I would say there's a range of experiences, including some extremely traumatic experiences of being misrepresented and traumatized. But I don't want to simplify it and say it's only one thing. On a regular scripted show, people write the show and people act the show and then you watch the show. But on a reality show, it's essentially this invisible collaboration between crew members, which includes the field producers for the show and the editors for the show, and cast members. And so when you see the results, you see it as a sort of simulacrum of real life, but what it really is the residue of this workplace relationship.
You do end the book with The Apprentice.
Yes.
The NBC show launched in 2004 and made Donald Trump a TV star and a household name. Why end there?
For me, The Apprentice did mark the end of something, which was it had this incredibly significant impact. It rebranded Donald Trump. It made him president. So it's the point at which the genre proved, for better or worse, it would affect everything from people's personal relationships to the government. But the other thing is actually, there are a lot of negative things to say about The Apprentice, but it's a beautifully made season of TV. And it was made by skilled, polished professionals. Because at that point, it was an industry. Like, people knew what they were doing. It wasn't anymore like the spaghetti on the wall period for reality TV, where everybody was making it up for scratch. And it was one of the most successful marketing schemes of all time. They took an extremely rotten product and polished him up and sold him to the world.
The book is Cue the Sun, The Invention of Reality TV. The author is Emily Nussbaum. Emily, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.